Welcome to the Front Four Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Marchese. Alongside me is my co-host, good friend, longtime work associate, work wife, or husband, however which way you want to look at our relationship.
Good with either or.
Yeah, we're equal opportunity employers over here at Front Four Fantasy. You can follow us on Twitter at MattyMar89 and at J_party. So a little bit of background about us. Jeff and I have worked together, or we've known each other for 10 years. I was an intern when Jeff was working at our current employer.
Yeah, I was fairly new though, so we started around the same time.
Yeah,
and you were an annoying intern for a little bit.
You know, I look back on that and I was actually a really annoying intern. But I did go get coffees and didn't complain about it. So, I mean,
it's bugging me for my lineups, which now I hope you understand how annoying that is.
Yes, that's very annoying. So, what is the Front Four Fantasy Podcast? Well, it's 4 fantasy football topics per show, and then a little something extra to wrap things up at the end. That is pretty simple, right, Jeff?
That is. The other way I look at it, Matty, is 4 quarters in a game. We're going to hit you with 4 topics, go through 4 things, and then with a bit of a 2-minute drill to end it.
And damn it, you're going to like it. And damn it, you're gonna like it. All right, so let's kick things off.
No, hang on, let me add to that. So here's how it started. Matt had this idea, and to be fair, he's the Batman of this fantasy world. I'm the Robin. This was his world. I'm just living in it. He'll hit you with a lot more numbers probably than I will, because he does a lot more work on it. Read him at sportsnet.ca. Go check him out. Go check out some of his pieces.
Jeff just basically called me a loser because I have nothing better to do with my life.
Hey, I'm the one doing the show from my basement, which is pretty obvious. So, I mean, you're on air more though. So
hey, when we make the big bucks, we'll both get proper offices.
In-house studios. Yeah.
If I showed you what the rest of this room looked like, it wouldn't be very pretty. But I digress. Okay, so topic number 1 for today, we wanted to talk about offenses that we should be targeting. But we're going to kind of or at least I will take a little bit of a different spin on it. So you had some offenses that you were looking at because there's a lot of fantasy options on them. But the question always becomes, how many guys can you actually rely on in these offenses? So which offenses were you looking at? Like teams that you want to be attached to?
Well, specifically, Matty, I'm looking at the ones that where you see 3 receivers that people tell you are draft worthy. Because every team has a running back you could target, and has obviously their wide receiver and their second option. But there are some offenses, and I counted 6 of them, where we're told that they have 3 receivers worth drafting this year. I have Tampa with Evans, Brown, and Godwin. There's obviously Pittsburgh, who we've heard about for 2 seasons now. Jacksonville, we know with the 3 juniors, Chark, Laviska Shenault Jr., and Jones. Dallas, we hear about their 3 receivers all the time. Cincinnati now, even after drafting Jamar Chase, has 3 receivers we're told are worthy when you add in T. Higgins. And Miami was a 6th one, I thought, that people throw names out there that are worthy. What are you saying?
So I just find this really interesting. So I had some offenses that I had in, ones that you are told that you should target. So Dallas obviously is at the top of the list. And when you look at how guys are drafted, so Dak Prescott, I believe, is going around QB 5. Ezekiel Elliott's going RB 5. This is all according to Fantasy Pros, by the way. I didn't check the QB ADP, but I have a general idea of where they're going. CeeDee Lamb is wide receiver 12. Amari Cooper is wide receiver 18. Michael Gallup's wide receiver 48. That all makes sense to me because Dak Prescott is being drafted as the 5th quarterback off the board. So that makes a ton of sense to me because, okay, so Dak's going to have a monster year. That means he can.
You like him in that spot, Matty?
I do like him in that spot. Yeah, I'm not so worried about the injury that they're talking about.
Yeah, I was going to say, coming off it, there's been some reports about shoulder and stuff. Any concern over that at all? Or no?
Nah, I mean, there's always going to be some concern, especially coming off the injury he had last year. I know one was his ankle and one is his shoulder, but I'm not concerned. He hasn't played in the preseason. So, I mean,
and let's nail this down. So the 4 before him would be obviously Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, and Lamar Jackson.
I believe that's how I think that's
Russell Wilson, I think, is slightly after him, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He's close.
Yeah,
I'll check right now.
I would have Aaron Rodgers. I would have Aaron Rodgers in that top 5.
You would, eh?
Probably Lamar, yeah. So then we get to Cincinnati. And Cincinnati is Joe Burrow, QB 12 or 13. Jamar Chase is wide receiver 24. T. Higgins, wide receiver 29. Tyler Boyd's wide receiver 35. Joe Mixon's running back 13. Something's got to give here because, like, is Joe Burrow going to support 3 1,000-yard receivers coming off of an ACL tear? This is the problem that I have. So
yeah,
I think
too many mouths to feed there. That's impossible
for sure. And I think Jamar Chase's value is too high in redraft. Personally,
I'll say this. This is what I think what we're trying to do in this segment is judge if it's just that good of an offense where all these mouths can get fed, or there's just too many here. And like you said,
for sure,
with the production, there's not enough. Should you just take a gamble on one and who you think would hit out of the 3?
Yeah. So like in Dallas, I think you can absolutely get away with the main guys that are at their value. Like Ezekiel Elliott, RB5, I'm fine with. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 12, I'm fine with. Amari Cooper, wide receiver 18, I'm fine with. Michael Gallup as your 4th receiver, or in some cases your 5th receiver, or as a flex option, I'm fine with him at wide receiver 48. But the point I'm going to make here quickly is when you look at the Bengals specifically, Jamar Chase, wide receiver 24, Higgins 29, Boyd 35, Mixon 13. I like Higgins and I like Boyd in that offense, especially Boyd in PPR. I'm not sold on Joe Mixon as RB13. But then you look at a team that actually has a proven track record. They did this last year. They were successful. Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, QB2. Stephon Diggs, wide receiver 3. Now it's going to start to get real hairy here. And I don't mean because the guy has long hair. Cole Beasley, wide receiver 56. Gabe Davis, wide receiver 68. Emmanuel Sanders, wide receiver 70. Zach Moss, running back 34. Devin Singletary, running back 39. Something doesn't make sense here. And I know why Cole Beasley's ADP is going down. Because people believe that, listen, I'm not here to tell you what to believe in with your vax or anti-vax takes. That's not what I'm here for.
I had a feeling you were going to go this way.
What I'm here to tell you is that it doesn't matter what Cole Beasley believes in. He's still a good football player. He was a wide receiver 3 last year, and he's being drafted as a wide receiver 5 or 6. What are we doing here, people?
Yeah, but here's my counter to that, Maddie. Do you have one person in mind to be that second option behind Stephon Diggs that's going to rack up the points?
Beasley.
That's your guy, eh?
Beasley.
But
last season,
see, to me, I wouldn't surprise me if the Bills spread it around and 1 week Moss has a big week, 1 week Emmanuel Sanders has a big week, 1 week Gabriel Davis looked amazing in the last preseason game. He could be another option as well. It wouldn't surprise me if they spread that love around each week, with Stephon being at the top of that food chain and everybody else getting their weeks but not being consistent.
So I'm gonna try and quickly pull up. Actually, I can't. I might be able to, but anyway, I think Cole Beasley had 4 100-yard receiving games last year. John Brown, was hurt a bit, but John Brown was still in the lineup a lot, and Gabe Davis was in the lineup all year. So that's what I'm saying. Josh Allen threw for 4,500 yards last year. Right. This is a proven offense. The running backs, whatever. The Bills don't want to run the ball. They want Josh to chuck it. They don't care. So that's what I'm saying. Even if the value is only Cole Beasley, that makes more sense to me if Cole Beasley is higher and then the other guys are lower. But you're telling me that Josh Allen isn't as good as Joe Burrow, and somehow based on ADP, Joe Burrow can sustain 3 legit wide receivers, 3 guys that are going to finish in the top 35? No, something's got to give here. And that's what I'm saying. So it's a really interesting concept, but yes, I'm with you. I think you need to pick one and settle with it. I don't think you can go and say, hey, you know what? I want all these guys. I'm going to trade for all these guys. No, you can't do that. Okay. Pick one. And for me, I'm going with the guy with the highest floor. So in a situation like Cincinnati, I know I can get Boyd later.
Right.
I'm going to take Boyd because I think he's got the better floor. In a place like San Francisco, it's Kittle, it's Ayuk, it's Debo, it's Sermon, it's Mostert. I take Debo before I take any of those guys, unless I'm really keen on taking a tight end early. I'm taking Debo because I think the production is going to be similar, but I'm going to be able to get better value earlier. Denver's the same. Judy, wide receiver 31. Sutton, wide receiver 34. No offense tight end 7, Javonte Williams as RB 26.
And especially this close to the draft, guys like Judy are climbing up the charts while Cortland Sutton's still like either staying where he is or dropping a bit. So which guy, like in there, I think they're ranked around the same place ADP wise. So which guy, like you said, are you going to get more value at?
So Judy's 3 spots ahead of Sutton. And before everything started to go crazy, when the preseason game started, Judy was behind Sutton.
And that's what I'm saying. He's been climbing. He's been shooting up the charts. And so maybe you get more value out of Sutton drafting him a little bit later on.
You probably do, but the problem is Teddy Bridgewater's throwing him the ball. So he's going to throw the ball, 7 yards down the field? That doesn't help Cortland Sutton. I'll tell you it helps. Jerry Jeudy. It's going to help Javonte Williams. It's going to help Noah Fant. And Jerry Judy's going to finish with 130 catches for 600 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's going to have a yards per reception of 6 yards because Teddy Bridgewater's throwing the ball. I'm just talking in jest, of course. It's going to be 130 catches for 700 yards, not 600. Okay, this kind of brings us to a conversation about.
Can I add one stat to what you're just saying?
Sure.
That I did so here's what I found. So I gave you 6 offenses that I thought I liked because they had 3 receivers that people are telling you to draft. Mm-hmm. Right. The last time that happened was 2019, where same thing. 6 teams had 3 receivers, and I believe it was like the top 75 or whatever people were telling you to draft. And that year, none of them. They had all 3 receivers finish in the top 50. And only one had 2 in the top 36. Last year, there were 4 teams where they had 3 receivers that people were telling you to draft. And only one of them, and I believe it was the Steelers, had all 3 receivers finish in the top 50. And I believe that was the first time in all 3 years that happened. And there was only 1, 2 that had 2 in the top 36. Like that same team is the only one that had 2 receivers top 36, and that 3rd receiver finished in the top 50.
Okay, it's crazy. And I'll tell you the one team that didn't have players that everybody was saying to draft, and they had 3 guys finish, I think, in the top 30 was Carolina. Nobody was talking about drafting Curtis Samuel. They were talking about drafting DJ Moore and maybe Samuel. They were talking about drafting Robbie Anderson that high. And why did that happen? Because Christian McCaffrey got hurt. And he usually gets 130 targets. So it's a really here's the other thing, Jeff. Pittsburgh has 3 wide receivers. They're all within wide receiver 36 or whatever it is.
And a rookie running back everyone's going nuts on, right?
Exactly. Ben Roethlisberger is going off the board at QB 24. I don't know. You tell me. How is that possible? Guy's going to finish QB 24 and he's going to have 3 wide receivers finish in the top 36 and a running back in the top 12? Somebody's gone crazy, and it ain't me.
Well, I'll give you this, though. They look good in their preseason. If that offensive line holds up, they give him time to throw the ball. He could be okay. I know you're not high on Roethlisberger, but, I mean, he's slimmed down. He looks okay, but I don't know. Yeah, you're right. Being ranked that low is crazy.
I just worry about him being able to throw the ball downfield. I mean, it's good for Juju Smith-Schuster and Najee Harris, but I don't know about the rest of them. Yeah, we will get to one of the Pittsburgh Steelers receivers later in this episode. I can promise you that. Okay, so we talked about offenses that we want to target. What about running back handcuffs that we want to target? So I'll start this by saying I have a running back handcuff story. I rostered J.K. Dobbins on one of my dynasty teams, and I did kind of sort of not really have a deal in place for Gus Edwards about a month and a bit ago. The deal didn't end up happening because the guy dealt another running back and he didn't want to deal Gus Edwards. And ho-hum, down goes J.K. Dobbins. And now Gus Edwards becomes an RB2 play.
And how many times have we seen this? We saw it with Cam Akers a little bit earlier and last year. Like, let's look at all the running backs that went down.
Yeah.
And you were looking at their handcuffs and seeing who was going to get the same work, right? Look at Christian McCaffrey, the biggest one last year, right? Mike Davis got a huge contract out of it. Yep. And you seen which is making people argue about what his worth is this year because they're wondering if they can withstand the workload because he looked like he was breaking down by the end of it last year.
So this is where the conversation kind of stems about what we just said. Attaching yourself to a good offense, even with handcuffs. So Gus Edwards is with the Ravens. We know that the Ravens are going to want to run the ball an absolute ton. A ton. So Gus Edwards is a handcuff that you want. In a situation like Arizona, where both guys are being drafted around the same ADP, the same thing goes for Buffalo with Singletary and Moss. you just want one. You don't want both. When the ADPs are so close, it's so hard. That generally means
You're
that
not getting both of them. You shouldn't.
exactly, and they're generally going to be in a timeshare. So it's
Right.
kind of hard to gauge which one's gonna have better value. Like I could probably say with comfort that Chase Edmonds is going to have better value in PPR than James Conner is. Generally speaking, he's also been healthier than James Conner has. But then you look at a situation like Carolina, and we saw what happened in Carolina last season, where Mike Davis, generally speaking, was used like Christian McCaffrey was. Maybe not to the greatest extent, but Mike Davis had 70 targets last season. Okay. And Christian McCaffrey only played 3 games. So in that type of situation, we know already what the offense is going to look like if the main guy goes down. We know that Chuba Hubbard is going to have immense value if Christian McCaffrey goes down. I can't say the same thing for if Zach Moss goes down, that Devin Singletary, or vice versa.
Well, we saw it last year, right?
Yeah, they don't even run the ball. So
yeah.
is it worth it? In some situations, it's absolutely worth it. Like I want to attach myself to the Carolina offense. I want to attach myself to the Green Bay offense. Like I want AJ Dillon, and even to a greater extent, I want Kylan Hill on deeper rosters because we've seen in the past, Jamal Williams had like 750 some odd yards last season total. And I think he had 3 touchdowns, and he played every game because Aaron Jones played every game. So there is some value there. Another one is what's going to happen in New Orleans. Like Tony Jones Jr. is the backup running back right now, and Latavius Murray. And I know all this stuff not because I'm smart, because I just researched this for my article. So Latavius Murray had 800 plus all-purpose yards the last 2 seasons as the backup in New Orleans, and he had 5 or more touchdowns in those 2 seasons. That's good value for a guy that is quote unquote a backup running back. It's a guy that, on a bye week, on a whim, you could probably throw him in. And I do wonder how much they're going to use Kamara out of the slot and out wide because Michael Thomas isn't there. And what that's going to do is they're going to not have him run as much. They maybe give him more targets, but here's Tony Jones Jr. Here, run the ball. So is he going to get 120 carries, 130 carries? Might very well. Could be very valuable. So those are the types of offenses that you want to attach yourself to. There's some that I just want to stay away from. Buffalo would be one of them.
In the way I've been looking at them, Maddie, especially like you said, like some of these have their running backs very close together, but I'm looking at the ones who could steal that starting job. The ones who maybe will take over for like whether it's an injury or just that will play them, like especially young guys coming up, and if they can maintain the workload that you expect from the starter running back. Like I'm looking in Denver with Javonte Williams, right? Looking at the Jets with Michael Carter, and I'm looking at even at San Francisco with Trey Sermon. Like, are those guys, if they get the opportunity and they do well, will they become the number 1 guy, and will they get a heavy workload? What are your thoughts on those guys?
I think Javonte Williams is already the starting running back.
Yeah,
I think Melvin Gordon's probably, he might not be done, but I think they want to feature Javonte Williams. Trey Sermon is an interesting one because I think Mostert's ADP was running back. I have it here. Running back 27, Sermon running back 31.
And the other one I love is the one you already mentioned was AJ Dillon, right? Like if anything happens to Aaron Jones, I think AJ Dillon just steps into that role and they don't miss a beat. Like he gets the amount of carries that you would expect. And dude, I don't know, from what I saw out of that guy last year, he's got talent and he's a big back, like a hard guy to bring down.
Big boy quads. Big boy quads.
Exactly.
Dillon, absolutely. I think Dillon might have some standalone value as a flex play. I'm not saying that that's going to be something that you're going to see every week. But I think you could do a lot worse in your RB4 position than AJ Dillon, especially because of what the value is. What was the other one that you had said there?
Michael Carter from the Jets.
Yeah. So the Jets one is a really interesting one Tevin Coleman, as of right now, is this, quote unquote starter.
I know. And there's some hype around him going into this season, which I don't fully get.
Every year.
Yeah, he's never been a number 1 guy. Like he's always, I mean, if anything, he gets the goal touches, right? Like he's your favorite word, the vulture.
Mike Tolbert, the TD vulture. TD vulture, my favorite. But Carter's interesting because he's the best pass catching back in New York. So I think that there's value there. I also think that Tevin Coleman just can't withstand a full season, so he's going to get hurt. I actually think the guy who may have the safer floor because he's shown well in the preseason, his ADP is low enough that he's worth the gamble, is Ty Johnson. I just look at that situation and say Michael Carter is going to be the primary pass catching back. Ty Johnson's going to get early down work, and Tevin Coleman's going to end up finding his way to the sidelines. I know Robert Saleh had him in San Francisco, and he probably likes the guy, and I just don't see him being as anything more than, you know, a guy that's going to be your third running back. Eventually, talent wins out, and I think that Ty Johnson has showed that he has more talent than Tevin Coleman, and Michael Carter is going to be really interesting. But I think he has standalone PPR value this season.
Let me bring up one more for you, Maddie. How about Devontae Booker with the Giants? How much do you trust Saquon Barkley's return to health and getting the same workload he used to get?
Well, I'm wheels up on Saquon Barkley. I am so in on him, especially I've been seeing him go. So I've done some underdog best ball drafts. I got him at pick 109. And I'm like, I don't care if he doesn't even play the first 2 weeks. The guy's a league winner. So
do you think the Giants ease up on his workload though, given the injury, and worry about it happening again? That's
early in the year, yeah. But I think by week 5 he's back up to 20 touches a week.
Right. Okay.
The Giants need it. If the Giants, Daniel Jones is so bad that they're going to need somebody to at least alleviate some of the pressure, and someone else that you have to account for. They've got playmakers. Daniel Jones just sucks. So Saquon will help at least alleviate some of that pressure. And as it pertains to Booker, because we've seen Saquon Barkley's injury history, if you have Saquon Barkley, you might need to reach, one round to get Devontae Booker because you need to lock that up. Having said that, we also saw that anybody else on that Giants offense after Saquon got hurt that went in was not very productive. Like Wayne Gallman, he was fine, but his yards per carry was garbage because the offensive line's so awful.
Garbage.
And his fantasy season was carried by all the touchdowns that he scored. I think he scored like 6 in 6 games or whatever it was. So it's hard that you can't bank on that on a bad offense. So
okay, and I'm going to give you one more on top of that, just to flip on the Saquon one. How about let's go to Carolina? What about Chuba Hubbard stepping in there and backing up McCaffrey? Like, do you think he gets more? Like, there's a bigger time split there or share split?
I think he is going to. I think Chuba's going to have value. I mean, they didn't bring in anybody else, and they let Mike Davis go, so he's the primary guy. And I think they are very well aware that if they want to make the playoffs, or if they're going to be able to get into the playoffs and he's going to be healthy, they're going to have to not give him 24 touches a week. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's what he was at, or pretty close to it. But, he's coming off of injuries that we don't even know what kind of happened. Like, he had the shoulder injury. And, I mean, all signs point to him being healthy, but he only played 3 games last season. Mm-hmm. And what we did see, and I mentioned it earlier, we saw what the backup becomes if the starter gets hurt in Carolina. Mike Davis was great last year. Like I said, I think he had 70 targets or something crazy like that. And he was good in the role. Chuba Hubbard, I think, is more talented than Mike Davis. Like, I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's more talented than Mike Davis. And he's going to offer some value. I don't know if he has standalone value because I don't think he does. But again, if you're drafting McCaffrey, because you probably drafted him first overall, better lock up that backfield. So I think there's some value in certain backfields, but there's some that you're just like, nah, I don't really care. I'll take somebody else's handcuff in that same spot. So in this case, do I want Moss and Singletary? Nah, I'll just take Moss or Singletary, and I'll take
for the upside.
Yeah, and I'll just take like Sony Michel to back up Darrell Henderson in case he gets hurt, because he's always hurt.
And those are guys who can give you spot starts, like play them against the defense they're playing against, right? Like, if it's a good matchup, maybe you get something. And they might, with offenses like Buffalo, if they're up big, maybe they get some garbage yards at the end that can build up some points, right? Like,
they better. I want to see lots of garbage yards. All right. On to the quarterback discussion. Elite quarterbacks and where to draft them. So Mahomes, we talked about this earlier. Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Prescott, Murray, Rodgers. Those are kind of your top 6.
Right.
I personally, I don't reach on the quarterback. I can't. I can't do it because I just
But
think
is there a spot like if Mahomes is still sitting there way past his ADP, will you grab him or is just not worth it at that point? There's still too many good receivers, running backs, even a tight end on the board that maybe you grab. Like that's so when I'm doing my pre-draft rankings now, that's the only thing I'm looking at. Like if he falls to this spot, do I take him
yeah,
or do I not?
yeah, it's the break glass in case of emergency factor.
Right, right.
So okay, so here's so
Because if everybody listens to what we're doing, Maddie, Mahomes is going to be on the board late.
he should be
Yeah.
one QB leagues. He should be.
Yes, exactly.
By the way, he didn't finish as QB1 last year and was
No,
drafted.
last year, top two were Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. They're
Yeah.
the two biggest fantasy point getters, and they were drafted at what? Like one was around 60, I believe, like 58, and the other one was even way later.
Yeah,
like
Murray would have been earlier, and
Yeah.
Allen would have been later. And Aaron
Yep.
Rodgers was drafted at like QB8 or whatever. I think he finished third.
There's no
So
doubt.
so here's how I kind of determine it. This is all you have to do quick math on your feet when you're in your drafts, especially on a short clock. But I do not believe that there is a discrepancy, enough of a discrepancy between Mahomes and the next five guys at quarterback. So if Mahomes is at, let's say, 25 points per game, and Aaron Rodgers is at 23. So are you making up the difference in what you would pick with each guy at their ADP? So for example, if I'm choosing between Patrick Mahomes and Austin Eckler, Austin Eckler, let's say, puts up 18 points a week. And if I'm going to take Austin Eckler, that means I could take Aaron Rodgers later. So the guy that would be closest to Aaron Rodgers is Deontay Johnson. So let's say that Deontay Johnson is 14 points a week for argument's sake. So there's a 4-point difference per week between Eckler and Johnson, and there is a 2-point difference between Mahomes and Rodgers. So by taking Eckler and Rodgers, I'm ahead. And if I have to choose, like, do we really believe that Patrick Mahomes is going to score like 80 more points than Aaron Rodgers if they're both healthy? No, I don't think so. So the discrepancy might not even be that much. But Austin Eckler and Deontay Johnson, like if we say that Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers are equal in value in redraft, do we think that Austin Eckler and Deontay Johnson are equal?
Yeah, no kidding.
Because they're not. So you have to make that decision on the spot. And if you like stacking wide receivers and tight ends with quarterbacks or whatever, that's fine. I'm not big on that for redraft. I'm bigger on that for best ball, as you should be. But I just don't see the value in taking a quarterback so early and then missing out. Because if you take, let's say you get Aaron Jones with your first round pick, okay, and then you take Patrick Mahomes in the second round, well, what are you left with as your RB2? Maybe Chris Carson, which, I mean, Chris Carson's a good player. I like Chris Carson, but is Chris Carson as good as Austin Eckler could be in PPR? Well, the answer is no. So even if you want to take those two, pray that Mahomes falls to you in the third round, fine. But if you're that adamant at taking a quarterback in the third round, then you might be able to get Josh Allen at pick 30. And Josh Allen may outscore Patrick Mahomes. So I just don't see the value in drafting elite quarterbacks that early, because you could get elite quarterbacks later on. So Jeff, where do you stand on these QBs and where to draft them? Like, how early do you want to reach on a quarterback?
Okay, now I will say this. I think there's been a big uproar because like last year we saw one of the best years we ever saw for QBs, and there are QBs that rush now. Like there were 4 QBs last year that rushed for at least 500 yards. Like, if you're getting that rushing QB with that dual threat, like, yeah, maybe I want to put them higher. Now, like you, I'm never going to reach way too early. I'd rather have that running back or that wide receiver, maybe even a tight end. But I think the one thing you have to consider is that, like last year, 24 quarterbacks managed to average at least 20 fantasy points per game. But there was a huge gap between them and the ones after them. It's crazy. They're after those, like, it's just insane to me. Like, I think there's a huge drop off after you pick the QBs you like, the ones you think are going to like hit this year or give you that consistency. But then if you don't, like, if you miss out on all those, like, I don't know, like you have to make sure you hit it. But yeah, I'm waiting till at least probably like the 5th, 6th round would be the absolute earliest I would draft one of those top end QBs.
Yeah, and there's guys that we didn't even mention in the top six, or in my top six anyway, that could absolutely creep in there. Like, do I think Jalen Hurts is going to creep into the top 10, top 8 or whatever? I don't, but he offers you a good floor because he rushes the ball so well. Like, we could absolutely see a, Lamar Jackson type season from him. But also, like, we haven't talked about Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford could absolutely finish in the top 5, and he's a guy that you don't have to reach at all for. And there's also Justin Herbert. Like, Justin Herbert was excellent last year. He's offensive rookie of the year, and he
You expect him to double that though, Matty? I don't know. Like,
it's so hard to say because I think that the team is really good, and they get Eckler back, so I think that adds some more protection for Herbert. And a guy like Mike Williams is in the last year of his deal, and we've seen what happens with guys like that. They blow up, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, that's where that guy was. Keenan Allen could absolutely finish in the top 8 or 5 in receiving this season with Herbert for a full year. So, I mean, it's very possible. I wouldn't throw it out of the realm of possibility, but I do believe that Matthew Stafford would be more likely to finish higher than Justin Herbert.
Well, here's the other thing I'm looking at this year that I find to be a really interesting concept that you can go into your draft with. There's so many young QBs and rookie QBs that maybe you take a chance on them, but then you also draft like a veteran one that can give you spot starts or that could start off the season different, right? Like take a chance on a Big Ben, or take a chance on a Fitzpatrick, and then at the side maybe go out and get yourself a Trey Lance or Justin Fields for when they start starting to put in. Like Baker Mayfield has a great 2 first weeks of the season, right? Like you're going to expect them to throw for big yards. He could be your buffer until you get to Justin Fields. Like that's another angle I think you can go, where you draft a young QB, and while you wait for him to start, you kind of take a veteran that can step in, or if anything happens with the rookie, you still got him on your bench to put back in.
Those 2 guys that you mentioned could absolutely be league winners, and because their ADP is so low, like Trevor Lawrence, you can't necessarily. You could do that and take him, but he's starting right from the beginning.
You know what's funny with him, man? I think he's like that last preseason game, he looked better. I don't know if it was after they got rid of Gardner Minshew. He's just more relaxed, not fighting for his job. It's just, and to me, it's all about how much that offensive line can hold up in Jacksonville. I don't know if they can protect them all year. He's got the weapons. He's got weapons around him.
I'm telling you that I'm not sold that he's going to be a guy that you can rely on this year. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, because he's not. But I don't trust what's going on there. I don't like the offensive line, and I don't like Urban Meyer, because I think Urban Meyer is a fraud as an NFL
Yeah, that's
coach.
A different one.
Yeah, that's a totally different topic for another day. Okay, exactly. So let's wrap up our 4th topic, and we're going to go with a little this guy or that guy, and it's going to be 2 players that are drafted around the same ADP, and which one would you rather have? So I will start, and I will go high on the running back board. I usually don't like to do this, but I'm going to go high on the running back board. Nick Chubb, RB4, or Aaron Jones, RB5. Now, let's say that this is PPR scoring, because you should be playing PPR scoring, and standard is not standard. I'll let you have that way.
Tell him, Maddie. Preach. Tell him.
Okay, so Chubb or Jones?
All right. Well, here's what I'm going to say to those. Neither of those guys, I don't think it's a lose. I think you're good with both of them. Like looking at last year's stats, and this first thing I'm like, well, let me check their stats. The most efficient runners with a minimum of 70 attempts last year were Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb, both with 5.6 yards per carry. And the next, like even more than Derrick Henry, Miles Sanders and J.K. Dobbins was after them at 5.3, and Henry was at 5.2. So in terms of stats, I don't know. As long as they're healthy and in the game, I don't think you can go wrong with either of them. The guy I think I'd choose would be Nick Chubb. Aaron Jones, I'm not, and this is just based on my own opinion. Like Aaron Jones, I don't trust his health. Like he's had an ability to not always stay healthy. And also I expect I do believe there'll be games where Baker Mayfield isn't at his best, and they'll rely more heavily on the run game. So Chubb will pick up extra yards there. What do you say, Maddie?
I'm going with Aaron Jones. And the reason why I go. So
we're starting.
I think Nick Chubb is the best pure runner in the NFL. I think he's actually a better pure runner than Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is a bulldozer, so that's a totally different world that he lives in. But pure runner, I think it's Nick Chubb. However, in PPR, Nick Chubb's value is limited a little bit by the presence of Kareem Hunt. And Nick Chubb was great last year. He got hurt and he was still a monster and finished ahead of, plenty of running backs. I think he finished as an RB2, if I'm not mistaken, missed a bunch of time. He may have been a low end RB1, but I can't remember. But I'm still taking Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, proven track record, scores a bunch of touchdowns. AJ Dillon's there, yes, but Aaron Jones, I believe, is more talented. And I would go with Aaron Jones because I just think he plays so much better in a PPR format because he is a game breaker when he gets the ball in his hands in open space. And he just gets more of an opportunity to have that as a pass catcher than Nick Chubb does. So I'm going with Aaron Jones, but I agree with you. I'd be happy with either of them.
Okay, now I'm going to throw a wide receiver at you. Let's go here. And this is around the 107, 108 mark. We have Laviska Shenault Jr. and Corey Davis at the Jets, who's I think being billed as their wide receiver number 1, right?
Yes. So one is, so there's a lot of Laviska Shenault love in the fantasy community. I mean, I sort of understand. He's talented. He's athletic. Makes plays.
He's got that like running back body, dude. He's hard to bring down. Like he gets the yards after the carry. That's what. Oh, sorry. Your turn to go. I'll let you finish before I give my take. But I think you know where I'm going now.
I'm pretty sure I figured it out. But I'm going to disagree with you, and I'm going to go with Corey Davis. And part of the reason why I'm going with Corey Davis is that he's going to be the number 1 guy in New York. Even Elijah Moore, he's there. He's not going to be the number 1 guy. It's going to be Corey Davis. Corey Davis was really good last year in Tennessee. He finished just shy of 1,000 yards, and he missed a game. So he probably would have hit that plateau. What we've seen in Zach Wilson's first 3 starts in the NFL, even if it's the preseason, the only guy he seems to look at is Corey Davis. So could we be seeing a Corey Davis 130 target type year? For sure we can. Do I think Laviska Shenault's going to get 130 targets? No, I don't, because I think DJ Chark's a better receiver. So I'm just going to take the guy who I think has the higher upside because he's the number 1 guy. Again, Shenault talented, but I think that Corey Davis's ADP is probably a little too low for what I think he's going to provide this season. So I already know what you're going to say. So
I know, but actually that you're giving me a different way to look at it. I didn't think about it that way, and that's a great point. Like just out of sheer volume, you're right. Corey Davis might be the better play. Like I said, I think Laviska is going to become Trevor Lawrence's favorite target. I think they will have some chemistry, and just by his ability for after the catch yards or plays, like I don't know. I'm buying the hype on Laviska Shenault. Let's just say that.
You just like his dreads.
That's true too. And the name. I just like saying the name. I want him on my team, man.
I'm gonna have dreads like this.
Your hair's almost long enough.
I know. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the wide receiver position. And I'm gonna go with a couple of DJs. Not mixing DJs. DJ Moore, wide receiver 21, or Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 22.
All right. Again, no stats really to back this up, and I'll be upfront with that. I know Maddie likes his stats, so we're probably going to differ on this.
I don't have any for. Well, I do have some for this, but okay.
I will say this too: DJ Moore broke my heart last year, so I'm a bit scolded by him. I was told to keep him. I was told he was going to have a monster year, and he was hot and cold. There were days where he didn't do much, so I'm a little bit scolded by him. I think Deontay Johnson has some upside. I'm not really high on either of these players, to be completely honest with you, Matt, but I think I take Deontay Johnson just because I believe in Ben in that offense a little bit more.
Okay.
I'm going to leave it at that. Just keep it simple like that. But yeah, that's my take on those guys. I believe in the Steelers a little bit more. Again, I like their offensive line. They're giving Ben a little bit of time. So even if he doesn't like, we talked about their 3 receivers, I think he will find Deontay Johnson and he will have plays.
So I'm going with DJ Moore. And I am a noted DJ.
I love
Moore
that we haven't
truther.
agreed on one yet. We haven't agreed on one. I love it.
I'm a noted DJ Moore truther. So DJ Moore, the last 2 seasons, has finished just shy of 1,200 yards receiving in each of the last 2 seasons with mediocre to terrible quarterback play.
Right.
And
And terrible games at times. See, this is the only
yes,
thing I'd look at. I'd look at the consistency, because some games he would go off and then other games you get nothing. And as a fantasy owner, I just hate getting frustrated like that. I
I'll
want a
tell
guy
you,
in my lineup I can trust
yes,
and
for
keep.
sure. I'll
Anyway,
tell you this. Historically, so I went and I did an article on DJ Moore, or had him in one of my articles, about people that you should target later in the season or after the first. DJ Moore is like god awful the first 5 weeks of every year, like terrible.
maybe that's
I
what
don't
it
know
is.
what it is, but
Dude,
after
and
that,
I'll say
it's
this to you.
unreal.
Let me add one more thing. He hasn't looked good to me in the preseason at all. I know they're kind of getting used to that offense and stuff, but he hasn't looked good to me at all. Like I don't know. I don't trust that Carolina offense at all this year. That's
Okay, so Teddy Bridgewater threw 15 touchdowns last season. That was
Mhm.
the only guy that threw less touchdowns than him that finished in the top 20 was Cam Newton. He threw 8. That's because he ran in like 1,000. But DJ Moore has, like I said, has those back-to-back seasons where he's just shy of 1,200 yards. If DJ Moore has 3 more touchdowns, so I think he had 3 and 4 the last 2 seasons. If he has 3 more touchdowns, I know it's a fluke stat. We are talking about him in the same light that we talk about Stephon Diggs, AJ Brown, Justin
Wow.
Jefferson, all of them. So I will take my chances on a guy that is going to put up yardage with a coach that I think is very, very good, especially an offensive minded guy. I'm taking that every day. And that's nothing against Deontay Johnson. But I think that DJ Moore can finish as a wide receiver 1. I think that Sam Darnold's in the best position that he's been in his career, with
Sure.
better weapons than he's ever had. I think we're actually going to see how good he is. And
Without
I mean,
a doubt.
he
I don't
can't,
believe in him. I think he's inconsistent too. But again, you're right. We will find out
we'll
what he
find
really
out.
is
But
this year.
but
And he's
again,
got weapons. He's got the weapons.
even with okay, DJ Moore had almost 1,200 yards with Kyle Allen, Will Greer, and a
That's
broken
pretty good.
Cam Newton for 2 games throwing him the ball. Give me DJ Moore, all of it,
That's
everywhere
fair.
I can.
All right. Cool.
All right, I'm fired up. I'm gonna
See,
start
and
to sweat
yeah,
soon.
okay. I guess for me too, the Pittsburgh, like Carolina's got the better running game. How many of those touchdowns go to the running backs? Anyways, we'll see. We'll find out. Anyways, that's good. Okay,
you
so
got one more.
I got one more for you, and we'll switch up positions again. I'll take you to tight end. These guys are going just before the 100 ADP mark, and I will. To be fair, there is a player in between them, but the two Jarvis Landry is slashed right in between these guys in ADP, but it's Dallas Goedert, who's tight end 9, and Noah Fant, who's tight end 10. Which one of those two will you take?
You're killing me, Smalls. I love Noah Fant. I do. I think that Noah Fant's athletic profile is absolutely incredible. And I do think that Teddy Bridgewater being the quarterback in Denver is actually a good thing for Noah Fant.
Right, because that's and let's say this: the one thing that hindered him last year, like he has that big play opportunity, but the one thing he didn't do last year was score touchdowns.
Yeah, and he was hurt.
He had an issue throwing. Yeah, he was hurt. He was hurt.
He
But
had the
when he was on the
injury.
field, even on big plays and big games that he had, like he was never found in the end zone really. Like,
Yeah,
man, I want to look this up, but like his touchdowns were like an extreme low last year. Like it was crazy.
yeah, but he's historically Noah Fant has like a similar stat line to some of the greatest tight ends that we've seen. Like it's something like 1,100 yards in the first 2 seasons is up there with guys like Gronkowski and Kelsey and like legitimate Kittle. But having said all that, and this is where it pains me to say this, but I think in redraft, I probably, if they're going around the same one, I'm probably going with Dallas Goedert. And the reason is I just don't like any of the pass catchers outside of Devonta Smith in that Philadelphia offense. Now, having said that, I don't know how much I trust Jalen Hurts to throw the ball to them, but Jalen Hurts seemed to have a really good rapport in the 4 games that he played with Dallas Goedert. So having said all that about how I love Noah Fant and waxing poetic about it, I think I'm probably taking Dallas Goedert ahead of him.
And I don't blame you, Maddie. Like, I just looked it up. Yeah, he had 3 touchdowns each of the last 2 years. Goddard was hurt, and in 4 less games, Goddard had the same number. But the year before, he had 5 touchdowns, even again in fewer games. Like, yeah, Goddard, and you're right. Just we talked about that Denver offense earlier. There's so many mouths to feed. There's a lot of receivers there that can make plays. The running back game might be okay, like we talked about. Like, yeah, I'm with you, man. And young QBs, especially historically, have once they get in the red zone, look at their tight end as the main target in that red zone. So I think Goddard, as long as he can stay healthy, could have a big year. Well, a big year or score some touchdowns that puts his numbers over the top.
Yeah, I think Goddard's a good option there. He could be the number one target. I mean, it's probably Devonta Smith, but Dallas Goedert could. I still do worry a little bit about Zach Ertz. I know he was not very good, like he was actually terrible last year, but he's still there. And I just wonder how much he takes away. But we've also seen the Eagles put up good numbers with both tight ends in the lineup. So I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Dallas Goedert takes on the previous role that Zach Ertz had. So yeah, I mean, I love Noah Fant, but I think
I know. Well, it's crazy to me even that his ADP is that high, even though given what you just said and given what you see on the field, how athletic he is, how big and strong he is, like even those numbers, like it's crazy to me he goes that low. Like, yeah.
Bad quarterback play gives people the wrong opinion on things.
It's true.
Like Drew Lock has been awful. I don't think it's all Drew Lock's fault. I think Teddy Bridgewater offers a higher floor but a lower ceiling. But
a guy who can't throw the ball down the field, like it's all short, little,
yeah. Okay, time for the 2-minute drill. So we're done our topics for today, and there's some newsy stuff that we want to get to before we end today's show. So Carson Wentz on the COVID list, already a shortened camp after the foot injury. He was already a stay away for me, still a stay away for me now, probably even more. I'm assuming based on your nodding that Carson Wentz is also a stay away for you.
Yeah, I haven't seen enough. I don't trust his health. Like, I don't know. Maybe if I need him on my bench, if I need a backup quarterback late, and especially nobody early in the season, I'll take a flyer on him. But yeah, he's not on my radar at all.
Okay, Trey Lance will be out a week with whatever a chip is in his finger. I don't know what that is. Is it broken? Is it fractured? What is it? This may even help his ADP drop a little bit in the coming week and a half, I guess. He's currently going as QB 20 according to Fantasy Pros. So the question I pose to you is, does Trey Lance sit the whole year? Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't really stay healthy, but when do you expect that Trey Lance will be the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers?
See, the crazy thing is, weren't they even talking about some kind of like split between the two quarterbacks?
That's going to suck.
I don't know how that's going to work. It's a little bit, I don't know if that's just coach speak or whatever. It scares me a little bit, but I think at some point in the season, like it won't be deniable what Trey Lance can do, especially with the weapons around him. Like, when do I expect them to start fully? I'd have to look at the schedule, but I'd say at least midway through the season. Like I think you give him a couple weeks, and if that finger heals all right, then I'm good. I'm good with taking a chance on him.
I have him starting week 6, and I think that's a lot earlier than people think, but I have him starting week 6. Okay, last note. It is a QB note as well. Bill Belichick says they have a lot of decisions to make in regards to their starting QB job. Who starts week 1 for the New England Patriots?
As long as Cam doesn't make any more bad decisions, I think he still gets to start. I think it just fits Belichick's plan. I think Belichick just speaks like that. But actually, like I'm starting to think Mac Jones gets more playing time this year than I originally anticipated, man. I think eventually maybe even early in the season, he steps in and does a job there. He's looked pretty good.
If Cam Newton stumbles, I think that leash is really short. And the reason why I'm saying that is if Mac Jones didn't look good in the preseason, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. But he's looked good. And I think that's when the leash started to get a little bit shorter on Cam Newton. And
but they still give him the opportunity to start the season.
I absolutely think that Cam Newton is the week 1 starter in New England.
Me too. Yeah, you can't. You got to go with the veteran there.
But if Cam Newton can't complete any passes with the guys that they brought in, Cam Newton will be out of a job very, very quickly because the Patriots don't want to miss the playoffs for a second straight year.
And the other thing I'm curious about that offense, Matty, is when we see both tight ends in that lineup that they brought in, along with Jacoby Myers and stuff, like how's that offense click with those 2 tight ends and Jacoby Myers?
I'll tell you this, they're probably better off with Mac Jones as the quarterback.
Yeah, fair enough. I said, rookie QBs like their tight ends. I think if you look, maybe I'll have this stat for the next one, but rookie QBs and then their connection or their completion rate with tight ends is always pretty high, I'm pretty sure.
The safety blanket. Oh, the good old safety blanket.
Let me ask you one, Maddie. Want to throw you in with the recent injury to J.K. Dobbins. Who benefits the most from him being? Is it Gus Edwards or is it Lamar? Do you expect Lamar to take more runs because he's out?
No, I think
does Lamar jump up your QB standings now that J.K. is out?
No, I think that Gus Edwards. I have him as a back end RB2 right now. After the injury, I think that they want to keep Lamar Jackson upright. So I think they're going to throw the ball. Like if you look at guys that they brought in the last 2 years, they brought in. I know Sammy Watkins is Sammy Watkins, but they brought Sammy Watkins in. They brought in Rashad Bateman. They drafted him this year. They drafted Tylan Wallace, and they have Hollywood Brown on their team. They still have Devin Duvernay on the team. Again, these are just guys in some cases, like Duvernay, James Prochet.
But they're always just guys until the quarterback starts
throwing
them the ball, right?
Miles Boyd
Bateman had did you see that catch Bateman had in the last preseason game?
Yeah,
it was incredible in his zone. Yeah, it's kind of good. But Lamar placed that ball perfectly. Yeah, if Lamar can stay there, hang in the pocket, and get the ball out to those guys, I don't know what happens.
I think that's what they want. I do not think that they want Lamar to run more.
Well, see, and here's the other thing. Baltimore's always had those 3 running backs. Like Gus Edwards was 3rd behind Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins. Like, do you think they go out and maybe try and get us somebody else?
They might go grab a veteran guy. Like, I don't know, maybe it's a Todd Gurley. I don't know the answer to that, but they're at least going to explore the options. I think Gus Edwards is probably getting, 250 carries this year. That's a lot of carries. And he's a big man, so he can handle the workload. So I'm not worried about that. I mean, Justice Hill probably jumps up the rankings a little bit. And then we'll see after that. I think the other guy is Tyson Williams.
Yeah.
Is a guy that they like, and he may be the backup to Gus Edwards. It's just going to be really interesting to see what they do. Would I be surprised they brought in Todd Gurley or a veteran free agent, maybe like a
bring back Mark Ingram?
Yeah, no, Mark Ingram's a starter in Houston, which
he might want out of there too, especially if Deshaun gets straight. Oh, we didn't even get. Maybe we'll get to that next time. Rumors of Deshaun to the Dolphins.
That's the next one. That's the next one. Well, that's it for us on the premiere episode of the Front Four Fantasy Football Podcast. You've been joined by myself, Matt Casey, and my co-host Jeff Azaparty. Until next time, check you later.